A homeless girl with nothing but a ragged blanket knelt in the rain to save a dying man gasping for breath on the street. She didn't know that the stranger she held in her arms was a billionaire whose fortune could change lives. But when his wife discovered who saved him, her reaction was so cold and cruel it would make you cry. Why would a woman who already had everything treat kindness like a threat? What secret fear could make her despise the girl who gave her husband a second chance at life? And how far would a betrayed billionaire go when the person he trusted most turned into his greatest enemy? The night was heavy with rain, and the city lights blurred through the downpour. Leah pulled her threadbare coat tighter, her ribs sharp beneath the fabric, her stomach hollow from days without food. She often whispered to herself, "Just one more night, Leah, survive one more night." But tonight, her survival instinct was interrupted by a man collapsing just steps away. He was tall, dressed in a dark tailored suit now soaked through. His hand clutched his chest as he gasped, his face pale against the glimmer of headlights. The world slowed, and Leah's body moved before her mind could reason. She knelt beside him, sliding her worn blanket beneath his head. "Sir. Please, hold on," she cried, pressing the damp cloth against his forehead. "Stay with me, don't close your eyes." The man's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, he saw not a ragged girl, but a memory. A little boy, once himself, sitting by his dying mother's bedside. She had whispered, "Kindness is the only true wealth, Richard." Richard Hale. Billionaire industrialist. A man who owned fleets of skyscrapers and controlled half the shipping ports along the coast. To the world, he was untouchable. To Leah, he was just a stranger slipping toward death. As she cradled him, her own life flashed across her eyes. Once, she had been a waitress with a laugh that drew people in. Until her mother's medical bills buried her in debt and her landlord threw her onto the streets. Kindness doesn't pay the rent, she had learned. Yet here she was, offering what little she had left, her warmth, her voice, her hope. A passing taxi slowed, its driver gawking at the scene. Leah shouted desperately, "Help! Call an ambulance!" The taxi sped away, tires hissing in the water. Her arms trembled as she shook Richard's shoulders. "You're not dying here. Not tonight," she whispered fiercely. Richard coughed, voice hoarse. "Why, are you helping me?" Leah's eyes burned with tears. "Because no one helped me." The irony was bitter. Richard Hale had never been without help, without staff, without loyal servants. But in this moment, under the rain, the only soul keeping him alive was a starving girl who had nothing left to lose. From the shadows of a high-rise balcony, Claudia Hale watched with narrowed eyes. Her silk robe clung to her figure as she sipped wine, unnoticed by those below. To anyone else, the sight might stir gratitude. But Claudia's jaw tightened. She had fought too long, climbed too high, to let a stranger carve her way into Richard's heart. And as lightning flashed across the city, Richard Hale's labored breath mingled with Leah's desperate pleas, unaware that this single night would ignite a storm of betrayal, cruelty, and brutal revenge. The ambulance lights sliced through the rain, painting the wet streets in flashes of red and blue. Leah sat cramped beside Richard on the gurney, clutching his cold hand as paramedics worked frantically. Every bump on the road made him groan, but he didn't let go of her fingers. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You're not leaving this world tonight." For the first time in years, Richard felt something strange, safety in a stranger's touch. His eyes flickered open and shut, but her face lingered, blurring with another memory. His mother's hand in his, soft but determined. "Kindness, Richard. Even in the dark, it's what saves us." At the hospital entrance, the sliding doors burst open. Nurses rushed him inside, and Leah stumbled after them, her coat dripping, her hair plastered to her face. She was stopped at the threshold by a firm hand. "You can't come in here," a nurse said. Leah's voice cracked. "But he'll want me there, Before she could finish, the echo of heels struck the marble floor. Claudia Hale arrived, flanked by 2 assistants, her diamond necklace glittering under the hospital lights. Every eye in the corridor turned, her presence commanded attention. She walked with the poise of someone who had fought her way out of poverty and sworn never to return. Her gaze landed on Leah, and her lips curled in disdain. "Who is this?" she demanded. The nurse hesitated. "She found your husband collapsed. She helped him until we arrived." Claudia's eyes narrowed, studying Leah's ragged coat, dirt-streaked cheeks, and trembling hands. Her voice was laced with venom. "So a vagrant off the street is the reason my husband is still breathing?" Leah lowered her gaze but spoke softly. "I just did what anyone should." "Anyone?" Claudia's laugh was sharp. "No, dear. People like you do it because you want something." She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. "Let me make this clear, you will not see him again. Whatever you think this moment means, it means nothing." Leah's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to scream that she hadn't thought of herself once, but the words stuck. She only nodded, backing away as Claudia swept past her. Inside Richard's room, doctors stabilized him, attaching monitors that beeped steadily. He drifted in and out, catching fragments of voices. One was calm and soothing, the girl's. The other, sharp and cold, his wife's. When his eyes finally opened, Claudia leaned over him, stroking his hair with mechanical tenderness. "Richard, darling. You're safe now. I'm here." But in the blur of medication, Richard whispered, "Where's the girl?" Claudia froze, her nails pressing harder into his scalp. "What girl?" she asked, too quickly. "The one who saved me," he murmured. His voice was weak but laced with a clarity that unsettled her. Claudia smiled tightly, masking her fury. "You were confused. There was no one." Richard's lids grew heavy again, but a flicker of doubt burned in his chest. Even half-conscious, he remembered the warmth of hands that didn't belong to Claudia. And in that fragile moment, a seed was planted, tiny but unshakable. Doubt. Suspicion. The kind of seed that, once watered by betrayal, would grow into something far darker. Something vengeful. The hospital room hummed softly with machines, a sterile calm after the chaos of the night. Richard stirred in his bed, his body weak but his mind restless. The image of Leah's face lingered in his thoughts, her eyes burning with determination, her trembling hand steady against his chest. It was not a memory he could easily dismiss. Claudia sat by the window, scrolling on her phone, her diamond bracelet catching the light. To anyone looking in, she was the picture of a devoted wife, poised, elegant, present. But inside her, old fears churned. She had clawed her way out of the gutter. Born in a slum where rats fought for scraps, Claudia had vowed at 13 never to be powerless again. She remembered standing barefoot in the rain outside a bakery, watching rich women toss away bread while she starved. That night, she whispered to herself, "One day, I will be them, and I will never look back." Richard had been her golden ticket. She had met him at a charity gala 15 years ago, when she was a waitress serving drinks. One spilled glass of champagne and a rehearsed look of innocence had caught his attention. Within 2 years, she had secured her place at his side, climbing from obscurity into untouchable wealth. But wealth could slip. She knew it. She felt it every time Richard's gaze softened toward strangers, every time he lingered on stories of loyalty, of kindness. And now, a homeless girl? No. Claudia would not allow it. "Richard," she said sweetly, rising to his bedside. "You scared me. You mustn't push yourself so hard." His voice was hoarse. "Claudia, there was a girl. She saved me." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flashed cold. "You were delirious. It was the paramedics who saved you." He studied her face. Something didn't fit. He remembered the warmth of human contact before the ambulance, the voice urging him not to die. He wasn't delirious. But he let it pass, for now. Later that night, in a shadowed corner of the hospital lobby, Claudia met with Victor, Richard's longtime financial advisor. He was sharp, balding, with a perpetual sneer. "He can't afford distractions," Claudia hissed, her arms crossed. "Especially not from some gutter rat. If she tries to come near him again, I want her gone." Victor smirked. "You mean, permanently?" Claudia's lips tightened. "Don't be dramatic. Just, erased. Invisible. Let her crawl back under whatever bridge she came from." Unseen above them, a security camera blinked, recording every word. Back in the hospital room, Richard stirred again. His mind replayed Claudia's dismissiveness, her eagerness to erase the girl. A strange heaviness settled in his chest, not from illness, but from doubt. For years, he had overlooked her coldness, excused her hunger for status as ambition. But tonight, he felt it like a crack spreading through glass. And in that crack, something darker formed. A thought. A question. What if kindness from a stranger meant more than years of loyalty from his wife? That question would become the spark for the storm to come. Rain had turned the city into a mirror of broken lights, each puddle reflecting a world Leah no longer belonged to. She sat curled beneath the awning of a closed convenience store, her blanket soaked through, her knees pulled to her chest. Every bone ached, but the silence inside her heart was heavier than the cold. She had saved a man's life, yet been treated as if she were filth. A kind-faced vendor stepped out from the corner shop across the street, holding a half loaf of bread. "Here," he said gently, setting it beside her. "It's not much, but it'll help." Leah's lips trembled. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the bread as if it were treasure. But no kindness came without memory. As she bit into it, she thought of her mother, a woman who used to bake bread every Sunday even when money was scarce. Her mother's laugh, soft and warm, had been Leah's anchor. Until sickness stole it all, leaving Leah buried in debt and loneliness. If only she had lived, maybe I wouldn't be here now, Leah thought. A black car pulled up across the street, its windows tinted, engine purring like a predator. Two men stepped out, dressed in dark suits that didn't belong in this part of the city. Leah froze, instinct whispering danger. One of them, tall with a scar along his jaw, approached. His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "You're Leah, right? The one who helped Mr. Hale." Leah's grip tightened around her bread. Yes. Why?" The man smirked. "Word of advice. Don't tell anyone. Don't go near him again. People in high places don't like strays wandering too close." Fear tightened her chest. "I wasn't trying to." "Doesn't matter," he cut in, leaning closer. "Stay invisible. Or we'll make sure you disappear for good." The second man tossed her a $20 bill onto the ground. "Buy yourself another blanket. That's the only charity you'll ever get." They climbed back into the car and drove off, leaving Leah trembling in the shadows. She picked up the bill with shaking hands, the insult burning deeper than the cold. Her whisper cracked in the night air. "I didn't want anything. I just wanted to help." Across town, Richard stirred in his hospital bed. His sleep was shallow, haunted by fragments of memory, the girl's desperate voice, the softness of her hands. He awoke with a start, hearing again his own words to her, "Why are you helping me?" and her reply, "Because no one helped me." Claudia sat nearby, pretending to read a magazine, her eyes watching him like a hawk. But Richard's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He imagined Leah alone, cold, forgotten. Something inside him clenched, sharper than the ache in his chest. Unbeknownst to Claudia, a new resolve was forming in him. One she could not see yet. One she would not survive. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of the hospital room, slicing across Richard's face. He blinked awake, his body heavy but his mind sharper than it had been in weeks. The steady beep of the heart monitor reminded him he was alive, because of someone who wasn't here. The girl. Leah. Her voice still echoed in him like a thread holding him to life. Because no one helped me. He turned his head. Claudia was perched on the edge of the bed in a silk blouse and heels, far too polished for a hospital visit. She was scrolling through her phone, typing quickly, her lips pressed thin. "Morning," Richard rasped. She glanced up, plastering on a bright smile. "Darling. You look stronger already. The doctors say you'll be home soon." He studied her carefully. For years he had accepted her charm at face value, never questioning the small cracks beneath it. But now, with Leah's memory fresh, those cracks gaped wider. "I keep remembering her," he said softly. Claudia's hand froze on her phone. "Her. The girl," Richard continued. "The one who saved me." Claudia laughed, but it was sharp and brittle. "Richard, you were barely conscious. You imagine things. The paramedics said you were alone when they found you." Richard's eyes narrowed. He was weak, but not blind to lies. "No. I felt her. She was real." Claudia's smile strained. "Darling, stress isn't good for your heart. Forget it. Whoever you think was there, it doesn't matter." Her words struck him harder than she intended. It doesn't matter. To her, kindness never mattered. Only power, appearances, control. A flash of memory surfaced, Claudia years ago, slipping her hand into his at a gala. Back then, she had looked at him with awe, with hunger disguised as admiration. She had whispered, "I'll never let you fall." He had believed her. But slowly, over the years, he'd watched her devotion harden into possession. Now, here in this sterile room, he saw the truth clearer than ever. The door opened and a nurse wheeled in a tray of breakfast. Claudia rose quickly, intercepting the nurse. "He doesn't need heavy food. Just broth." The nurse frowned. "Doctor's orders say he needs more strength." "I said broth," Claudia snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. Richard's brows furrowed. This was no slip of concern, it was control, instinctive and ruthless. He watched the nurse retreat, cowed, and something inside him clicked. Claudia wasn't protecting him. She was managing him, just as she had managed every piece of his life. "You don't have to control everything, Claudia," he said quietly. Her head whipped toward him, eyes narrowing. "Someone has to, Richard. You're too trusting. Always have been." There it was, the slip. The admission. She wasn't his protector, she was his warden. Richard leaned back, his pulse steadying not from calm but from resolve. He masked his thoughts with a weak smile, but behind his eyes, a storm gathered. For the first time, Richard Hale began to plot, not business, not empire, but revenge. The city was merciless at night. Leah huddled under the rusted fire escape behind a bakery, clutching the $20 bill the men had tossed at her like trash. She hadn't slept. Every shadow felt like a threat, every passing car made her flinch. Their warning echoed in her head, "Stay invisible. Or we'll make sure you disappear." Her stomach growled, and she pressed the bill against her chest, whispering, "Just one meal, Mama. That's all." She rose, ready to risk the corner diner, when a voice called softly from behind. "You again." Leah spun, startled. It was the same vendor who had given her bread the night before. He stood with a steaming paper cup. "Coffee," he said simply, holding it out. She blinked at the kindness. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "Saw what you did at the hospital. Not many would have knelt in the rain for a stranger. Figured you deserve more than fear and hunger." Tears burned her eyes as she took the cup, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Thank you," she whispered. The vendor studied her. "Careful, though. Word is, someone wants you gone. Men in suits came asking about you." Leah's chest tightened. "I don't want trouble. I just wanted to save him." "Sometimes saving the wrong person brings enemies," he said, his tone grave. "But it also brings allies. Don't give up yet." Meanwhile, in the penthouse suite above the city, Claudia paced like a caged predator. Victor sat comfortably on the leather sofa, sipping whiskey. "You assured me she'd be gone," Claudia snapped. "Yet she lingers. I can feel her shadow around him." Victor smirked. "Relax. A girl like that won't last long. Fear is a strong leash." Claudia shook her head. Her reflection in the glass wall stared back, perfectly composed, but behind it, panic swirled. Richard had been quieter since the hospital, watching her with eyes that pierced deeper than before. He had even mentioned the girl again. That seed of doubt terrified her. Flashbacks clawed through her mind, her father walking out when she was 10, leaving her mother with nothing but debts and despair. She remembered her mother's broken voice, "Men always leave for something softer, younger, kinder." Claudia had sworn she would never be discarded, never be replaced. She poured herself more wine, muttering, "He won't leave me for a beggar in rags. He won't." Back at the hospital, Richard pretended to sleep while Claudia fussed over his chart. His eyes cracked open once she turned away, watching her carefully. Every gesture, every word she spoke to the nurses, felt rehearsed, controlled. "Darling, you must rest," she cooed when she noticed him watching. But he didn't answer. His mind was elsewhere. He remembered Leah's trembling voice, and the vendor who had stepped in with small kindness. If strangers could care more than his own wife, what did that mean about the woman he had trusted all these years? The silence between them thickened. And Richard Hale, billionaire once blind to betrayal, began to see with terrifying clarity. The hospital room smelled faintly of disinfectant and fresh lilies, an arrangement Claudia had ordered that morning to brighten the mood. But beneath the flowers, the air was heavy with control. Claudia hovered near the doctors, her smile fixed, her tone honeyed. "He's improving, but let's not rush, shall we? I don't want him overwhelmed. Limit visitors. He needs rest." The head physician hesitated. "Mrs. Hale, his progress suggests he should begin physical therapy soon." Claudia's eyes hardened. "Do I need to call the board? Or will you respect my husband's recovery?" The doctor fell silent, scribbling notes. Richard, lying quietly in bed, caught every word. His pulse didn't quicken. He simply tucked the information away. Later, Claudia sat beside him, stroking his hand like a devoted wife. "The staff means well, but they don't understand you like I do," she whispered. Richard forced a faint smile. "No. They don't." But in his mind, her words echoed differently. "They don't control me like you do." That night, after Claudia left, Richard shifted in bed. His muscles trembled with the effort, but he pushed himself upright, testing his legs. Pain shot through him, but beneath it was strength returning faster than anyone knew. He lowered himself back down before the night nurse returned, a faint smirk tugging his lips. "Let her think I'm weak. The weaker I look, the stronger my strike will be." Flashback, years ago, Richard sat in a crowded boardroom, half the directors against him. A rival had tried to outmaneuver him with false reports. Richard had pretended to be unsure, feigning doubt, letting the rival press harder until his arrogance revealed the lie. Then, at the perfect moment, Richard exposed the evidence, dismantling him in front of the board. That rival never recovered. Now, lying in this sterile room, Richard recognized the same game. Claudia was his rival. And she was overplaying her hand. Elsewhere, Claudia met Victor in a dimly lit lounge. She sipped red wine, her nails tapping the glass. "He's asking questions," she muttered. "About her." "The girl." Victor leaned back, grinning. "Then feed him answers. Make her look like a parasite. Say she's a grifter who staged the whole thing." Claudia's lips curled. "Yes. If he sees her as a threat, he'll cling tighter to me." Victor chuckled. "Careful, Claudia. You sound scared." "I'm not scared," she snapped, though her voice quivered slightly. "I'm ensuring my place." Back at the hospital, Richard listened to the hallway whispers. Nurses mentioned Mrs. Hale's restrictions, their unease barely hidden. One younger nurse slipped him a knowing glance, as if silently saying, "We see what she's doing." Richard closed his eyes, but this time it wasn't weakness, it was calculation. Claudia thought she was the puppeteer, but she didn't realize the strings were beginning to fray. In the silence of his own mind, Richard Hale began to design the architecture of revenge. The Hale penthouse glittered with crystal and chrome, but tonight its shine masked venom. Claudia reclined with two of Richard's closest board members, swirling her wine with casual grace. She was clever, Claudia said smoothly, "I'll give her that." Pretending to be a savior when all she wanted was a way in. "You know the type, professional beggars. They sniff out weakness, then latch on." One of the men frowned. "You're saying this girl approached Richard on purpose?" Claudia sighed, feigning reluctance. "She staged the whole scene. Probably followed him for days, waiting. Imagine if the press discovered he'd been duped by a street girl. The company's shares would nosedive." The word shares did what Claudia knew it would. The men stiffened, worry flickering in their eyes. Money spoke louder than truth. "Best if she disappears," Claudia finished, her tone like silk over steel. Meanwhile, in his hospital bed, Richard let his eyelids droop, pretending sleep as Claudia fussed and whispered into her phone. He caught fragments: "con artist, parasite, security will handle it." His jaw tightened. She was not only erasing Leah, she was rewriting her into a villain. When Claudia finally swept out, Richard exhaled slowly. The room dimmed to night silence. That's when the young nurse, the one who had given him that knowing glance, entered. She checked his chart, but her eyes lingered on him. "You hear everything, don't you?" she said softly. Richard's lips curved faintly. "Depends who's speaking." The nurse hesitated, then leaned closer. "I saw her. The girl. She wasn't a scammer. She was terrified, soaked to the bone, begging the staff to take you inside." Richard's heart steadied. Confirmation. Proof that his memory wasn't a fever dream. He lowered his voice. "I need a favor." "Discreet." The nurse swallowed. "What kind?" "Find her," Richard said. "The girl who saved me. Tell her I haven't forgotten." The nurse hesitated, glancing at the door as if Claudia might appear. Then she nodded. "I'll try." Across town, Leah sat by the riverbank, her hands raw from cold, the vendor's words echoing in her mind. Sometimes saving the wrong person brings enemies. But it also brings allies. She closed her eyes, and memory flooded in, her mother's voice as they packed scraps into a bag years ago. "Leah, listen to me. The world will try to break you. But you don't fold. You hold. Even if all you can hold is yourself." Tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered, "I'm trying, Mama. I'm holding." Back at the hospital, Richard lay still, but his thoughts were sharp, deliberate. Claudia thought her lies would bury Leah. Instead, they had given him clarity. For the first time since his collapse, he wasn't just surviving. He was planning. The knock on the alley wall startled Leah. She jerked awake from a shallow sleep, clutching the empty coffee cup the vendor had given her. A young woman in scrubs stood there, eyes kind but cautious. "Are you Leah?" she whispered. Leah's heart thudded. "Who wants to know?" The nurse stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I work at St. Vincent's. Mr. Hale. Richard Hale. He asked me to find you." Leah's breath caught. She pressed her back to the wall, overwhelmed. "He remembers me." The nurse nodded. "More than remembers. He said, tell her I haven't forgotten." Leah's throat tightened. A fragile smile broke through her exhaustion. After all the threats, all the loneliness, someone still saw her. "Is he safe?" she asked. The nurse's expression darkened. "Safe, but watched. His wife, she doesn't want you near him." Leah's smile faltered. Claudia's shadow loomed even here. Fear flickered, but hope was louder now. She whispered, tell him I'll hold on. No matter what." Back at the hospital, Richard masked his growing strength beneath practiced fragility. His hands no longer trembled when he lifted his cup, but he let them shake when Claudia entered. His legs carried him to the bathroom on his own, yet he returned to bed before the nurses could notice. Claudia, believing her performance complete, doubled down. She arrived each day with controlled smiles and whispered poison. "She hasn't disappeared, Richard," she said one afternoon, brushing his hair back like a doting wife. "Girls like her never do. They circle, waiting for scraps. I've made sure she won't bother us again." Richard looked at her, his face unreadable. "And how did you make sure, Claudia?" She froze, then laughed lightly. "Oh, you know me. I protect what's mine." "Protect," Richard thought. "No. You cage what you fear." Flashback, Richard sat years ago at a negotiation table, silent as a competitor ranted, revealing too much. He had learned the power of silence. That it made others desperate to fill it. And when they did, their arrogance became their downfall. Now, he used the same silence on Claudia. Each quiet stare unnerved her more than 1,000 accusations. Victor visited once, grinning. "You're lucky, Hale. Claudia's been keeping everything together for you. Without her, your empire would collapse." Richard smiled faintly, weak on the surface. "Yes. I am lucky." But inside, he sharpened the edges of his plan. "Let them believe I am blind. Let them think I am broken. When I rise, it will be with a blade they never saw coming." That night, when Claudia slept in the chair beside him, Richard stared at the ceiling, his body stronger than ever. The girl he owed his life to was out there, waiting. His wife was tightening her web, blind to the knife he was sharpening in silence. The storm was no longer coming. He was becoming it. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and applause. Claudia Hale stood at the center of it all, radiant in diamonds, toasting the recovery of her beloved husband. "Richard is proof," she declared, voice dripping with pride, "that strength and loyalty carry us through." The crowd clapped, cameras flashed, and for a moment, Claudia believed she had won. Then Richard rose. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed back his chair and stood without help. Gasps rippled across the room. Claudia's smile faltered. "My friends," Richard said, voice steady, commanding. "I owe my life to someone tonight. Not to the doctors. Not to my wife." His gaze slid to Claudia, pinning her in place. "But to a girl who had nothing, yet gave me everything. Her name is Leah." A stunned silence fell. Reporters leaned forward. Board members whispered. Claudia's mask cracked. "Richard," she hissed under her breath, "don't." But Richard raised a hand, silencing her. "While I lay dying, she shielded me with her own body, begging strangers to help me. And what did my wife do? She tried to erase her. Spread lies. Paid thugs to hunt her. His voice hardened, cutting like steel. All while claiming love. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Claudia's face drained of color. "You're lying," she snapped, desperation bleeding into her voice. "She's a fraud. She." Richard turned to the audience, and with a nod, the young nurse stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "I saw everything. Mrs. Hale bribed us to keep Leah out. She called her a parasite. She wanted her gone." Gasps turned into outrage. Cameras swiveled, flashing in Claudia's face. Victor tried to slip out, but Richard's security, men loyal only to him, blocked the exits. Richard's eyes never left Claudia. "You thought you could control me with chains of deceit. But you forgot who I am. I built empires from nothing. I destroy those who betray me." Flashback. Richard at a boardroom years ago, dismantling a rival with evidence revealed at the perfect moment. That same cold precision now burned in his gaze. Claudia lunged toward him, wild. "I gave you everything. You'd be nothing without me." Richard's voice was ice. "No. You would be nothing without me. And tonight, you are." He signaled. Screens lit up around the ballroom, emails, recordings, and financial transfers, every shred of Claudia's deceit laid bare. Gasps turned to outrage, applause to condemnation. Claudia staggered back, cornered. Reporters swarmed, flashes exploding like judgment. Her empire of lies collapsed in minutes. And then, through the crowd, Leah appeared, led by the nurse, hesitant but radiant in her humility. Richard extended a hand toward her, his voice softer now. "The one who saved me when no one else would." Leah's eyes filled with tears as she stepped forward. The crowd erupted in applause, not for Claudia, not for wealth, but for truth. Claudia's diamonds glittered as she was dragged from the spotlight, her screams drowned in the roar of Richard's vengeance and Leah's vindication. Richard Hale had risen. And his revenge was brutal, final, and just.